Hello, this is Unsung with GameLeap, and in today's video we're going to be giving you the top lane 13.23 tier list. 13.23 has seen a few changes to top lane, including an increase to the power of split pushing, balance changes to champions like Cassante, and an overall meta shift. There has been a large shakeup to the top lane tier list because of this, so make sure that you stay tuned if you want to get that LP up before the season ends. Let's go ahead and get right into this tier list, starting off with the C tier. C tier is where we're going to place our fringe picks or champions that are on the very edge of viability. This is going to be your AP Varus top, your Heimer, your Yasuo top, and things like that. Champions in the C tier for top lane are going to be champions that are hard to get a lead on, hard to win on, and hard to translate an advantage on. Just a quick reminder that there's not really a completely troll champion in all of League. Most champions are pretty balanced in the majority of roles. You could play something somewhere and make it work out, but what changes is the amount of effort, impact, and agency that you have overall. The C tier champions just do not hold up to par compared to most other champions, which is why they're in here. An example of a great C tier top laner would be Heimer. Heimer is a champion that functions amazingly well as a counter pick, but this counter pick playstyle is what keeps him so weak. He's not really able to push a lead by himself, he's not a great help to the jungler, and he has some truly awful matchups such as Irelia, Yorick, Cho'Gath, Quinn, and the like. Taking one bad death on this champion is 10 times worse than taking a death on an S tier champion, because not only is his scaling almost non-existent, but his early game pressure is so lackluster that even if you get a lead, it's easy for the enemy team to shut you down by simply building Merc Treads, or by even ignoring you completely once they complete a Hull Breaker. Now that we covered the C tier, let's go ahead and look at B tier for top lane. Cassante is currently at 46% win rate. If we use Lolytics, he's 47%, but the average tier win rate is going to be 51.3%. This means that Cassante is sitting at 46% win rate after his adjustments. This champion is not in a hot spot and won't be until the new items come out. Once again, Riot does not know what they're doing with Cassante, and unfortunately this champion is going to have to sit on the weaker end until they figure it out. Now, what constitutes a B tier top laner? B tier is where champions are simply just a little bit weaker. They're not so on the fringe of viability like Heimerdinger that they're basically unpickable, but the champions here require a specific matchup, don't have a well-rounded playstyle, and are just overall more difficult to win on. Cassante is a perfect champion to place in B tier because in his current state he is simply just undertuned. The kit's not terrible, but the numbers are. Just a quick reminder, if you want to learn any of the champions listed in this video or something like Fiora, which is a little bit more complex, head on over to GameLeap.com, where I've made a course specifically for Fiora to get you in game as fast as possible. Now that we covered our B tier, let's go ahead and move on to A tier. Champions in A tier are going to be a bit more well-rounded, more capable of carrying games, but still have profound weaknesses. A great example of an A tier champion is Set. Set is really good at fighting you when he's on top of you. However, if we walk away from Set or we go even with him in lane phase, he's gonna get outscaled, outpressured, and out-impacted. By no means are champions in A tier bad, they're just simply weaker than the things that are in S tier and in OP tier. Another great A tier champion is going to be Sion. As you know, Sion has very bad matchups into Camille, Yone, Fiora, Darius, and the like. However, if Sion is not shut down appropriately by one of these few champions, then he turns into a hyper-scaling, split-pushing tank assassin menace. This is another great example of the A tier top laners, their purpose in the game, and why they're a little bit on the weaker end. There is still counterplay here. Alrighty, now that we covered our A tier, let's go ahead and move on to S tier. S tier is where we start to see the 1v9 champions pop up, and the champions that are overall going to have an insane amount of impact no matter how well or poorly you play them. Unlike A tier, the champions in S tier will reward you a little bit more for your mechanics. That's why we have things like Riven in here. Riven is a very strong champion, especially after her buffs this patch, but she does require enthusiast knowledge to get the most out of her. If you're a novice Riven player, she might be closer to B tier, but once we understand the animation cancels and how to play this champion appropriately, as well as her game plan, she is easily an S+ tier champion on this patch. So we'll place her in S tier because of that knowledge requirement. Rating a champion like this is a great middle ground to show a champion's strengths while also being respectful of a higher than average skill floor. Aatrox is another S tier champion who we normally have in OP tier. However, the changes to the meta have made this champion significantly weaker. It's hard to play Aatrox into Camille, Jax, and some of our other OP tier picks. This of course will make his effectiveness a little bit less potent, but he's still going to be a solid champion as far as the game goes. Now finally, let's go ahead and move on to the S+ tier. Our first pick for this tier is going to be Camille. Camille has been in OP tier for quite a few of our videos, and that isn't going to change anytime soon. This champion has immense scaling due to Divine Sunder, she's really good into the majority of the matchups that are playable right now, and she has the potential to 1v9 carry just about any game, even without jungle attention. This is exactly what you want in a carry top laner. This champion is effective, has good gold scaling, she rewards your mechanics well. You don't have to be a god to play her, but it definitely does help. There are almost no flaws in this kit, and her numbers are so high that even a novice to Camille can still press E and R on a gank and be useful in the late game when you have 3+ items. That is what constitutes an OP tier champion. Our next pick for OP tier is going to be Jax. Jax has gone up significantly in value simply due to how strong split pushing is as a whole. On Jax, we build a Sheen item, which is great for taking turrets, and then we can also opt into Spear of Shojin, which makes our dueling really strong, and then into Hullbreaker, which completes the trifecta of having a strong lane, having good duels, as well as having map pressure. Jax is immensely strong in team fights. He has an amazing gold scaling. There's simply not very many champions in the game that can actually duel him, especially post Shojin, which allows him to run amok in side lanes. The buffs to the interior and inhib turret gold have made Jax into a complete split pushing monster. If you leave him alone for any sort of time, he's going to take at least one turret and then get himself a 1k advantage from the turret plus the minions. On this patch, split pushing is king, so the majority of our split pushers are going to remain in OP tier for as long as we have such high value on these turrets. Next up, getting away from the split pushers for a moment, we have Garen. Garen is incredibly effective, he has really good scaling, and his matchups aren't too bad, bar Camille. If we ban Camille on Garen, there's not too much for us to worry about. Camille beats Jax, he does okay into some of the more skill-heavy matchups, and we can always change our playstyle to adjust to any matchup as a whole. If we're against something that's going to destroy us in melee range, we can run Phase Rush on Garen, or if we're against something that we can destroy, we could swap to Conquer and just look to one-shot them. Regardless of what playstyle you choose, there's basically no way to mess this champion up, and even if we do, we have our W as a kind of get-out-of-jail-free card. Garen in the out-of-lane phase is also incredibly easy to pilot because we simply flash an opponent with our Q available, we E, Stridebreaker, and then ulti them before the silence wears off to get an almost guaranteed kill. What makes Garen so strong is not just his combo, however, it's the fact that he can also go Hullbreaker and kind of opt into a pseudo split pushing playstyle. He's not the greatest split pusher, but Garen can definitely make do. This champion is dummy strong, you should really add him to your top pool. Even if you just need a Jax counter pick, this champion is completely worth learning on this current patch. Now onto our fourth OP pick of the patch, and that is going to be Fiora. This champion is disgusting. There is no other way to put it. Fiora is a very high skill champion, but you don't need to access that skill to make the most out of her kit. We can be a middle of the pack or even lower than average Fiora player and still be effective in the side lane due to how oppressive she is with her Q poke, Divine Sunder, and how strong split pushing is on this patch. It is a joke that this champion has been allowed to remain this strong for so long. You guys need to be abusing her while you can. She basically does not have a losing matchup if we play her appropriately, and even if we don't play her completely correctly, if we do have a bad matchup, we'll still be able to scale, we'll still be able to pressure the opponent's base constantly, and carve out a huge amount of impact for ourselves. If you want a true carry top laner to invest time into, Fiora is even more effective than both Camille and Jax. This champion is just really strong. You guys need to be playing her as often as possible. Next up in our OP tier is going to be Malphite. Malphite's been on the sleeper end of top lane strength for quite some time. Of course, Malphite has one of the best ultimates in the game. His E is super strong, the W is a huge amount of damage, and we'll be able to delete just about any AD carry if we're allowed to be left alone with them. The only thing that's holding Malphite back is the champions like Camille, Fiora, and Trundle, who are capable of dealing with him in a side lane and then out-pressuring him around the map if we don't have a really fast and concise engage or jungle assistance to kind of alleviate some of that pressure. That being said, if we don't have one of these three super bad matchups, then Malphite will forever be a strong champion. Post 6 Malphite is one of the scariest champions in the game because it almost guarantees a kill for our jungler, or at minimum, it will guarantee our opponent has to use a summoner spell. This by itself is great, but if we take Malphite into a team fight, then it's basically going to be the same thing. If we are the enemy AD carry, they're not going to have a great time, and it's going to require a whole bunch of people to turn around and peel us. This type of impact is fantastic on a tank champion, especially one that's as simple as Malphite. Malphite does have bad matchups, but they can generally be winnable by having good wave management. If we could set up a freeze, then it doesn't matter if our opponent is one of the strongest laners in the game, because we won't actually have to interact with them. That being said, if you're planning on playing Malphite, make sure that you ban Sylas. It is imperative. Malphite has one of the worst matchups in the game in Sylas no matter where he is on the enemy team. Malphite wins only about 45% of the time against Sylas when Sylas is even in the game, and then if Malphite directly has to lane against them, that win rate goes down even lower. Ban Sylas, collect your free LP, and then make sure that you do it again next season as well. One of the better kits in League of Legends that has truly withstood the test of time. Now finally, we have a more surprising OP tier pick, and that is going to be Trundle. Trundle over the patch has risen in terms of his overall win rate and his pick rate as well. This champion is really strong in the side lanes due to the Sheen damage buffs and the Q mana cost change that he received in the last patch. While these buffs by themselves aren't enough to push Trundle into OP tier, What is enough to bring him into OP tier is the effectiveness of split pushing and how good it is to take turrets by yourself. There is no champion in the game that melts turrets faster than Trundle, and this is only made even more effective by just how much gold that they give you. I have seen a 0 and 10 Trundle on this patch 1v9 a game simply due to the amount of pressure that he's been able to output. This guy really fed his lane, he was super behind, and yet even still, he got one turret and was able to snowball it from there. If you're left alone with Sheen, Demolish, and Plates, you're going to be making 300 gold minimum, and if your opponent is forced to TP out to go and help with the dragon, you can easily go and take their turret from them. If they leave again or take a bad recall, then there goes the next turret, and the second that we have Hullbreaker, we can actually just walk up directly in their faces, take the turret from them, turn on our ultimate, and then kill them too. This champion is really strong this patch. You guys need to be playing him. He is completely overpowered, and it's just now picking up. If there was only one champion that I could recommend for you guys to play this patch, it would be Trundle. Great champion, solid game plan, exactly what you need to get out that last little bit of LP so you can end the season higher than last. Anyways, this was Unsigned with Game Leaf. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video.